So tonight's story frightens me on so many levels, I think mainly because it's my dad's personal story. So with that being said, let's jump right into tonight's story. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary Appalachian story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story is a personal encounter that happened to my dad. When you grow up in the 80s like I did, you are accustomed to being outdoors for most of the day. During summer breaks, we would go out first thing in the morning and not come in until dinner time, especially when you live in a house that has a chain link fence that encases the entire property. It was fall break and my older sister and I decided it would be a good idea to camp outside one night. My dad had built us a large playhouse that was elevated and sat about 6 feet above the ground. Underneath the playhouse there was a large sandbox that we would often play in. We gathered all of our supplies that we needed, which included the essentials: sleeping bags, blankets, and of course, marshmallows. We didn't have a fire to roast them, but we would put them on sticks and act as if we were roasting them on the open fire. We had always gone camping growing up, and it was one of our favorite things to do. So when we had a few days off from school, we begged our parents to stay out there for the night. As I mentioned earlier, we had a chain link fence that wrapped around the whole property that was pretty tall and had these spiky tips at the top. It was definitely a different time, and our parents said we could spend the night out there. We were honestly having a blast camping out there playing, and it was starting to get dark outside. My sister and I decided it was time to go up the side steps into the playhouse and get ready to sleep. It was raining, which added to the spookiness of the experience, and we were sitting there telling each other scary stories, trying to freak each other out. Both of us being kids, we never really expected to encounter something horrifying, but that's when we heard a loud thud hit the roof of the playhouse. It sounded like something with weight hit that roof, easily weighing 100 to 150 pounds. My sister and I were sitting there shaking, terrified of what just hit that roof. And that's when we heard it breathing. It sounded like guttural growling and raspy breathing, nothing we had ever heard before. The only thing separating us from the outside of that playhouse was a bedsheet we had hung up for some sense of security as well as to keep the bugs out. Whatever was on that roof then walked across the roof and jumped down to the steps right outside of that sheet. It then pushed the sheet in about 1.5 feet and pulled it to the side and peered in at us. That's when we saw the creature. It was a pale gray creature with almost a dark green tint to its skin. It had long limbs and fingers with nails that looked yellow and jagged. It was sat there crouching, peering in at us, and it was almost like we could tell it was trying to decide if we were going to be dinner or not. That's when it dropped the sheet and we heard it launch from the steps over to the trampoline we had next to the playhouse. This trampoline was easily 20 to 30 feet away from the playhouse, and within the span of 2 seconds, it was on the steps and over to that trampoline. We knew it was on the trampoline because we heard it land on it and the springs scrunched. We heard it jump one more time, and then we didn't hear it again after that. My sister and I were frozen in fear. Both of us were crying, not knowing if that thing was going to come back or not. It felt like an eternity sitting out there for that long. We sat out there in that playhouse for another 2 hours, terrified to get out and run inside, because we were afraid that whatever we just saw would come back and get us. And every single noise we heard, we would think that that thing was coming back. I kept telling my sister we needed to run inside to tell our parents, but she just kept telling me we should stay there because if we went outside, we wouldn't know where the thing was. I eventually talked her into both of us going inside, and we braced ourselves and ran as fast as we could inside, slamming shut and locking the door behind us. We went into our parents' bedroom and told them what we had just encountered, but they didn't believe us. My sister and I never really talked about it much after that. Anytime I would bring it up, she would get really scared and would brush it off because she didn't want to talk about it. This is easily the most terrifying experience I have ever encountered in my life. The Appalachian Mountains have and will always be a beautiful but terrifying place to be. Whoo, Dad. Every single time I hear or read this story, I get instant chills because that is absolutely terrifying. And to you guys, the very first time my dad told me this story, I got instant chills and tears in my eyes because I couldn't imagine being a kid just wanting to go outside and camp one night, because you're in an encased property. There's a chain link fence that goes around the whole property, and you should be safe back there, or so you think, and you see a creature like this. Absolutely not. But not only the creature peering in at you guys, but then the description of the creature is what freaks me out so bad. It sounded like guttural growling and raspy breathing. A pale gray creature with an almost dark green tint to its skin, with long limbs and fingers that had jagged yellow fingernails. Ugh, that gives me the chills. But also, the next part that scares me is it was on the steps, 1 second. 2 seconds later, it was over on the trampoline that's 20 to 30 feet away. I don't know anybody that can jump from here to 20 to 30 feet away to another object within 2 seconds. And they heard it land on the trampoline once because the springs on the trampoline scrunched, and then they heard it one more time, and then it disappeared. I don't know where that creature went. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it even got into the backyard to begin with, but that is terrifying to me. And Dad, I am so sorry that you guys went through that. That is horrifying, and I couldn't imagine. But Dad, thank you so much for sharing your story and allowing me to share it with everyone else. I hate that you guys went through that, though. That is absolutely horrifying, and I couldn't imagine going through that. But anybody in the comments that has an idea of what this could have been, please let us know, because we've been talking about it, and the closest thing we can think of would be a rake. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them, and they do not have to be about the Appalachian Mountains. They can be about any scary encounter that you've ever had. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. I hope you know how much I love you. I hope you have the best night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.